Today, we take the time to remember the legacy of Dr. Walter Anthony Rodney, who was a post-colonial militant war crusader with a brilliant mind and a Pan-African heart. Walter Rodney was a scholar, a working-class radical, and a revolutionary from the Cooperative Republic of Guyana who was deeply influenced by Marxist ideas and the Pan-African movement. He traveled far and wide, becoming known internationally as an activist, a scholar, and a formidable orator. Dr. Walter Rodney was recognized as one of the Caribbean's most intelligent minds on account of his scholarly works and political activism that engendered a new political consciousness. He was sharply critical of the middle class for its role in the post-independence Caribbean. Walter Rodney was also a strong critic of capitalism and argued that only under the banner of socialism and through the leadership of working classes could Africa break from imperialism. His numerous writings on the subjects of socialism, imperialism, working class struggles, Pan-Africanism, and slavery contributed to a body of knowledge which came to be known as the Dar es Salaam School of Thought. Rodney's scholarship and leadership in the working class movement therefore had a long reach, including within the revolutionary movement in his native Guyana. Sadly, on the 13th of June 1980, Walter Rodney was unalived in a car explosion in Georgetown, Guyana, and his death has been ruled as an assassination. Dr. Walter Anthony Rodney was born in Georgetown, Guyana on the 23rd of March 1942. Rodney grew up during the country's anti-colonial movement, where his father Edward Rodney was a member of the Marxist-oriented People's Progressive Party, which led Guyana to the struggle for freedom from the British rule. His interest in the struggles of the working class began at a young age and continued with his involvement in debate and study groups throughout his student years. Walter Rodney developed into an intellectual and a scholar who is recognized as one of the Caribbean's most brilliant minds. His academic record is filled with awards, open scholarships, and honors. Walter Rodney attended the Queen's College, the Premier Boys High School in Guyana, and later the University of West Indies, the main Mona campus in Jamaica, where he graduated with first-class honors with a Bachelor of Arts degree in history in 1963. Rodney then attended the prestigious School of Oriental and African Studies in the London University. He graduated with an honorary PhD in African history at the age of 24. His PhD thesis titled A History of the Upper Guinea Coast and his seminal work titled How Europe Underdeveloped Africa illustrated his duality as an intellectual and activist as he challenged prevailing assumptions about African history and put forth his own ideas and models for analyzing the history of oppressed people. Rodney's work had assumed a foundational place in understanding the legacies of slavery and colonialism for the underdevelopment that unfolded over centuries on the continent. The core of his analysis rests on the assumption that Africa has been crucial to the growth of capitalism in the West. What he termed as underdevelopment was in fact the product of centuries of slavery, exploitation, and imperialism. Rodney conclusively showed that Europe did not merely enrich their own empires, but actually reversed the economic and social development in Africa. Therefore, his extensive account of African history from the early African empires through the modern day, Rodney shows how the West built immense industrial and colonial empires on the backs of African slave labor, devastating natural resources and Africans in the process. For Walter Rodney, underdevelopment of Africa was a condition historically produced through capitalist expansion and imperialism. He therefore situated that underdevelopment within the contradictory process of capitalism was one that both created value and wealth for the exploiters while emasculated the exploited. On the 15th of October 1968, the government of Jamaica declared Walter Rodney as persona non grata and consequently banned him from ever returning to Jamaica. His subsequent dismissal by the University of West Indies in Mona led to protests by students and the poor of West Kingston that escalated into riots known as the Rodney Riots, resulting in several deaths and millions of dollars in damages. These riots triggered an increase in political awareness across the Caribbean, especially among the Afrocentric Rastafarian sector of Jamaica. In 1969, Dr. Rodney returned to the University of Dar es Salaam, where he was promoted to a senior lecturer in 1971 and later became an associate professor in 1973. In 1974, upon returning to Guyana for work, the government of Guyana repealed the work offer given to him. With a view of the Pan-African Congress of 1974, Walter Rodney prepared a text on the international class struggle in Africa, the Caribbean, and America. In this landmark work, Dr. Rodney denounced leaders like Félix Houphouët-Boigny, Jean-Claude Duvalier, Idi Amin Dada, and Joseph Mobutu, who he accused of turning to tribalism under the guise of negritude. In 1979, Walter Rodney was arrested and charged with arson after 2 government offices were burnt. His trial was deferred 3 times and later dropped for lack of evidence. Sadly, on the 13th of June 1980, Dr. Walter Anthony Rodney died in a car explosion in Georgetown, Guyana. He was only 38 years old. A lot of mystery surrounds his death, with the Guyana regime claiming that he was unalived by a bomb which he intended to use to bomb a prison in order to release men arrested on treason charges. The opposition, however, countercharged that Walter Rodney was assassinated by the Guyana regime and that the bomb was planted in his car. Needless to say, more than 4 decades after the death of the Guyanese scholar Dr. Walter Rodney, the Guyana's National Assembly accepted the findings of a major commission of inquiry into the assassination. The Commission of Inquiry concluded that the then Prime Minister Forbes Burnham had organized the murder, which was perpetrated by an active duty sergeant in the Guyana Defense Force, Sergeant Gregory Smith. Additionally, Donald Rodney, who is Walter Rodney's brother, was in the car with his brother when he died and was convicted in 1982 of possessing explosives in connection with the incident that unalived his brother. However, on the 14th of April 2021, the Guyana Court of Appeal overturned the judgment, and Donald's sentence was therefore exonerated after 40 years in which he contested his conviction. The late Dr. Walter Rodney was survived by his wife Patricia Rodney and his 3 children. The legacy of Dr. Walter Anthony Rodney is that of a revolutionary Marxist scholar and activist whose work exposed how colonialism and capitalism created underdevelopment, inspiring anti-colonial and anti-racist movements globally through his book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa and his commitment to connecting intellectual theory with the struggles of the working class and oppressed people in Guyana, the Caribbean, and Africa, emphasizing self-liberation and social justice. Rodney's death was commemorated in a poem by Martin Carter entitled For Walter Rodney by the dub poet Linton Kwesi. Similarly, David Debidine also wrote a poem on Rodney in his 1988 collection, Coolie Odyssey. Additionally, in 1977, the African Studies Center at Boston University inaugurated the Walter Rodney Lecture Series. Moreover, in 1982, the American Historical Association posthumously awarded Dr. Walter Rodney the Albert J. Beveridge Award for a history of the Guyanese working people. Further, in 1993, the Guyanese government posthumously awarded Dr. Walter Rodney Guyana's highest honor, the Order of Excellence of Guyana. Also, the Walter Rodney Close in the London borough of Newham has been named in his honor. Rodney is the subject of the 2010 documentary film by Claremont Chang titled War Stories, Walter Anthony Rodney. And finally, Walter Rodney is listed on the Black Achievers Wall in the International Slavery Museum in Liverpool, United Kingdom. And with that, let's take a moment of silence as we reflect on the life and times of the late Dr. Walter Anthony Rodney, as I read for you one of his famous quotes, which reads, "We are the only group in the world who deny ourselves, preferring to be known as Negroes or Black rather than Africans. In order to know ourselves, we must learn about African history and culture. This is one of the most important steps towards creating unity among Africans home and abroad."